My name is Tarmack, and thanks for checking out my review of Too Dark on PC. Too Dark is a top-down stealth adventure developed by a company called Gloomywood Games, published by Bigben Interactive. Released on March 10th, 2017 on Steam, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4. It's up for $25 US on Steam and $30 US on PS4 and Xbox One is its base price. Now, I'll admit that looking at the game initially had me concerned on the price, but there is a pedigree here that's worth talking about. Too Dark is the brainchild of Frédérick Raynal, the director of the original Alone in the Dark series, which, if you're someone who played video games in the 90s, was kinda a big deal in the horror genre. This footage was recorded on an i7-5820K with 16GB of RAM and a GTX 1070 video card. I played it on PC specifically, and with keyboard and mouse. I also received review code for the purposes of this review. As always, gameplay is the first thing we need to talk about. Too Dark controls like a wet yak in a proper Canadian winter. You use WASD to control Mr. Smith, the main character, and the mouse to determine where he's facing. The main issue that I have with the controls is that there is a certain precision required when picking up objects and attacking, which unfortunately the controls didn't really gel with me very well. Now, that said, the theory behind the game as a stealth adventure is that you approach scenarios much more slowly and can really take your time to do them perfectly, so that precision may not harm your ability to play the game, it just didn't feel great to me. Not being able to pick up objects when facing them diagonally, for example, or swinging to hit a rat you didn't see just doesn't feel so good. The stealth aspect, on the other hand, was really slick. In Too Dark, everything is based on light and sound. When you're standing in the shadows, NPCs cannot see you, and when you're not moving, they cannot hear you most of the time. Line of sight is a big deal as well, and you can toggle regular movement and tiptoe movement by holding Shift on the keyboard or using the right mouse button to move. You can throw little candies to distract enemies, and you can slowly approach from behind for what I believe is supposed to be an insta-kill most of the time, though I did have an occasion or two where I feel like I had a low-damage weapon or something because it didn't work in a few situations. The whole game is focused around this idea of approaching an area unseen, hiding in rooms, listening to NPC sounds, and moving quietly but quickly to the next spot without being seen or heard. The feeling of success in not being seen is similar to games like Hitman, but the feeling of dread was certainly heavier here. In fact, even the save system is an active one where the game doesn't pause as your character stops to have a cigarette, so you better pick your save spots carefully. At this point, I do need to talk about NPC AI though. The story premise behind Too Dark is a save the children one, and I'll talk more about the story further in the video, but you need to know this now because each level is based around finding evidence and saving the children that are in the level. Sometimes an NPC will follow you to the ends of the earth unless their pathfinding gets them stuck on a piece of level art. And sometimes NPCs will totally ignore the fact that a child who is following well behind you, because children are slow, is actually there. These are issues that I think the developer needs to fix because as it stands, it does break immersion a bit when a child walks right past a hostile NPC in open light and is ignored. The way you interact with the children is about as cliche as it gets. You toss a candy and they'll follow you. You can tell them to be quiet and stay in place while you move along and clear out a path, or just determine how you're going to snake around the level to try and get them to the end. Personally though, I think what I would like to see is the game tightened up on the AI response to children so that NPCs actually pay attention to them more, but also increase the child's movement speed by about 25%. I'm fine with them trailing behind a little bit, but not as much as they currently do. And the last item for gameplay I want to touch on is combat. If you engage most enemies in direct combat, you will lose. This is a game of subterfuge, sneaking up behind them, distracting them, and dealing with encounters in very short bursts. Your gun is really only useful if you screw up badly and need to dispatch an enemy in a real hurry, but be warned, a lot of noise is not good for you in this game. I think that for the most part, this level of combat is a solid approach for a stealth adventure, much like many others, as it really helps you to appreciate how frail your character is. I'd also like to say that the floor pit traps are cruel, but they do teach you to start to pay attention in a damn hurry. It is difficult to talk about the story without spoiling anything, so I'll be brief and keep the spoilers out of it. Mr. Smith, a police detective and the protagonist in the opening sequence, is out for a camping trip with his wife, son, and daughter. Something bad happens to them, spiraling Smith into a sort of descent into madness and obsession, which results in what amounts to a lifelong focus searching for and saving children. Now, I've played a lot of games, many of them with dark themes, including the old Alone in the Dark games themselves. I mean this with all of the conviction I can muster. Too Dark is the darkest game that I have played since an old PC game called Dark Seed, which was based on H.R. Geiger artwork like this. By dark, I mean in theme, attitude, physical world, events that occur. This game is depressing and horrifying. In fact, there were at least 2 scenes that quite literally had my jaw drop at a developer putting stuff like this into a game. This may sound like a criticism, but it's not. I genuinely appreciate when game developers make games really meant for adults, not just games for adults that will inevitably be marketed to kids. The set pieces for Too Dark are really nice from an ambiance standpoint. Everything matches the atmosphere, even main character Smith's home, which you return to from time to time in between missions. While the characters themselves seem realized in 3D though, in a top-down 2D world, they appear much lower in resolution and it does clash a bit with the backdrops. The only part that I would say is frustrating is that traps and other interactive items in the world don't always stand out, which is fine, but magnified due to the lack of area lighting. I know that the low light style is intentional, but it is almost always a death that lets you know that a certain trap or section of the flooring is dangerous, which isn't great. And in keeping with that dark atmosphere with perils around every turn, you could not ask for a better soundtrack. Somber piano and violin, ramping up with organs into a kind of electronic metal chiptune set of tracks for more heart-pumping action sequences. It was absolutely incredible. Performance is simply not an issue as the game uses a heavy retro style, but loading times did seem quite long for the level of assets on offer here. And your options menu is absent of any meaningful customization, just leaving basic windowed or full screen modes and changes to audio volume. That said, much like Hitman and other stealth games, there are available options that you can turn off, like the visual representation of sound and other player helping UI elements to increase the difficulty if you wish. How do I summarize a game like this in the best way possible? Too Dark is one of the most dark, heavy, and macabre games that I've ever played. Its stealth, controls, and AI may have some mechanical flaws, but the overall tone and attitude of this game is executed to near perfection. Characters are simplistic visually, but the levels are complex and on point at all times. If Too Dark doesn't make you uncomfortable to play, no game will. And at the $25 to $30 US price tag, depending on whether you buy it on PC or console, frankly, I think the cost is fair. I clocked in around 9 to 10 hours of gameplay before I finished the game, and that's without jumping back into levels under the challenge mode to try to perfect my runs. However, there is more to game reviews than all of that. My glowing review of the gameplay is hampered by something. Too Dark is protected by Denuvo. Now, you may know that I maintain a rather strong consumer focus, and that precludes me from recommending a title that has Denuvo anti-tamper, simply because it puts yet another company in the pipeline that can stop you from accessing games that you own. Frankly, that's nonsense, and a game like this, at a solid price, shouldn't have to resort to a form of DRM that is draconian like that. And to make matters worse, Too Dark was crowdfunded through Kickstarter on the basis that backers would get a DRM-free version, which is now not happening. Either you're confident that your game is good enough that people will gladly buy it, or you're not. And I am not okay with behavior that punishes the people who bought your game, especially punishing the people who bought in at the Kickstarter stage. At the end of it all, if Gloomywood Games removes Denuvo, I will absolutely recommend this game from the bottom of my now cold, dead heart. But until that happens, I suggest you wait until it's a lot cheaper, as a game for $5 to $10 getting taken away from you should Denuvo servers or your internet go down is a lot easier to stomach than a $30 game. This has been my review of Too Dark by Gloomywood Games, published by Bigben Interactive. It's out now on PC via Steam with a $25 US base price and Xbox One and PlayStation 4 at $30 US, not counting launch week discounts. All footage was recorded using review code provided by the developer on an i7-5820K, 16GB of RAM, and a GTX 1070. Thanks for checking out the review, and please do take a look at some of the other regular content that I've got on the channel. It's through your support that I'm able to keep doing all of this work. My name is Tarmack. Thanks for watching.